Thunder grunt.
Hey, welcome to Writers Blockbusters, the show where we treat the final edit of the movie like the script. I'm one of the hosts, Bob Rose, and we're going to go around the Zoom table and introduce ourselves.
I am Jimmy George. I am a screenwriter and script consultant. My Twitter handle is @JimmyRGeorge.
I'm Jamie Nash. I am a screenwriter and the writer of the book Save the Cat Writes for TV. And my Twitter handle is @Jamie_Nash.
And my Twitter handle is @ThunderGruntBob. Surprising. Today we're going to talk about Pig, starring one unknown actor named Nicolas Cage, a little indie guy. And before we get into our outline and talking about the script, let's go around and talk about what we actually thought of the movie sans that. Jamie, I'm going to point to you first.
Sure. So this was that movie, and I'm like a lot of people with this movie. When I heard about it, and I didn't even really look into it, I thought it was some kind of John Wick knockoff on a low budget with Nicolas Cage. You know, I thought he was going to go through and kill people and try to find his pig and do that kind of stuff. So, and I kind of avoided it. I was like, yeah, I don't know. It looks like another one of those movies. And when I finally watched it, when it showed up on Hulu, I still thought that. So I kept watching and waiting for the guns to come out, waiting for some blood and mayhem. And then when it never happened, it was so much better than if it did. Because honestly, I really wasn't interested in seeing another one of those kind of movies. So I'm a big fan of this movie. We kind of pushed this movie to review for that reason, is because we liked it. You know, we kind of were like, this is a movie that could be really good on this podcast. So I think that kind of shows, because it's not really a blockbuster. Maybe not even everybody has seen it, but if they have it, I think they'd really like it. And I think it's a hugely instructive movie, but it's probably in my top 5 from last year. So.
Damn. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Jimmy, go ahead.
I had not seen this movie when you guys pitched it for the show. And I'm so glad that you guys pitched it for the show, because I think I couldn't find the script online. I'd really love to read it. If anybody is listening and has it, please, can you send it to me? Because I'd love to see what it looks like on the page. I actually think this is movie number 73 we've talked about. I think this is one of the best scripts we've talked about.
74 if you count Speed 2.
Oh, 74. That's right. We had our Speed versus Speed 2 episode. Speed's going to come up in this conversation.
That's true. It will, yeah.
So yeah, I actually think I love this movie. I love all the choices. Like Jamie said, I think it's a really instructive script for writers for many reasons that we're going to get into. I think it's awesome.
Well, I mean, I don't have, as far as the enthusiasm is concerned, I got nothing new to add. I mean, I think if me and Jamie didn't love this so much, we wouldn't have pushed it, because it doesn't fit our mold very well. Nah. But we did adaptation and stuff. It's fine. No one's gonna get mad at us. I really love this movie. Outside of the script, I just really love the meditation on grief and loss. You know, I think it's one of the better movies I've seen in maybe the last decade tackling that subject. As somebody who's had a lot of grief and loss in my life, this was a very emotional watch for me, actually. So, yeah, I responded to this really well, and it's actually probably my favorite movie of the year, maybe? I'm forgetting something. Or maybe The Suicide Squad. Those are the top two. Let's just say that. It's up there. It's really high. So I really like this movie a lot. Yeah.
That's awesome.
We're all coming from a really positive. This
It's
is gonna
a
be,
love fest.
It's going to be a love fest, everyone. This is, prepare that.
It was either this or Eternals. We couldn't figure out.
Oh, man. That would have not been a love fest, I think. I think that would have been slightly under.
I still haven't seen it.
I actually haven't seen it either.
I've seen it. I'll say this. I've seen it, and I wouldn't ask you both to watch it.
Okay.
I was trying to figure out a triggering movie. I couldn't think. It's the only one I could think of.
People don't know this. Jamie's really good at pushing buttons.
Well, also, I mean, before we get into it, it's not that we didn't love this movie, but we also had a little bit of trouble deciding what new movie to do next because of the release schedules and everything.
Yeah.
So it just came at a perfect time. We were like, wait, what about Pig?
Well,
Yeah.
it was kind of like we were thinking about Oscars. Oscars hadn't been announced yet, so we were thinking about those, and we were kind of thinking of what movies we'd put up for the Oscars in some ways, and this kind of came up in that discussion.
And this movie was robbed, by the way.
Snubbed.
Totally snubbed. Whatever. Nic Cage has an Oscar already. We'll go with that. Leaving Las Vegas. It's fine.
It's one interesting thing. I was looking to see if I could find the script. It is in the for your consideration script list. So I wonder if I've gotten it or something.
Oh shit, Jamie, send it to
PDF. I don't remember getting it, but if I have it, I'll send it. I'll send it your way.
Awesome.
Let's not do that on the show.
No.
I'm geeking out. I can't help it.
10 minutes of Jamie looking through files on his computer.
Interestingly enough, Eternals is
Here
also
it is.
Eternals is also on that list for your consideration.
Honestly, if we did Eternals, I think it would be a good episode, but not a love fest.
It'd be like the Wonder Woman 84.
Yeah, somewhere there, maybe Captain Marvel-y, a little bit worse than type of thing. A lot of misguided, weird choices.
Sometimes when the movies don't work, it makes for the best
episode. It's the best learning episode. Yeah. All right. Well, let's get into it. Jamie, who wrote this shit? Bingo. Just kidding. Bingo card. Who wrote this shit?
Yeah, so it's a writer, director, and a frequent collaborator, or at least the collaborator was on one of his shorts. Vanessa Block is the collaborator, and Michael Sarnowski is the director, the writer-director. Interestingly enough, this is kind of weird. It has story by for both of them in IMDb. I don't know, but I'm sure that. So I'm not exactly.
I saw that too. Does that mean they didn't write the script itself? Or
I can't say I did any further research.
That could have just been an IMDb error.
It's a mess up. Yeah, they definitely
wrote the script.
Yep. So Michael Sarnowski, I don't know much about him. The only thing I see in IMDb Pro is that he's attached to A Quiet Place 3 as of right now. That's all I got for you, but I really don't know much else.
Isn't
either
something
of you?
Coming out of I
know as much as you. I'm looking at the IMDb page right now. So.
A lot of short films, so it might be worth a look up if any of those are online. I haven't.
Short film directors represent.
Yeah, man. I dug up an interview with him, but they don't talk about his career. They just talk about the movie. And I'm going to quote that interview a little bit, and I can't. It's somewhere on here where that article is. I think it is thefilmstage.com has a great interview with him about this movie.
Okay.
And the writing. Yeah.
All right. Let's get into. You're gonna have to explain some of these to me because even Jamie had a little confusion.
Jamie's like, "What is this stuff?
What is it? What did you write down here? Genre busting. Premise with a new skin exercise. I'm just reading them off. Yeah.
All right, Jamie, you want to take it, and then I'll bounce off you.
Yeah, sure thing. So, genre busting premise with a new skin exercise is our next topic. Is our exciting topic. So what we're really saying here is when you take some kind of thing like John Wick, but then you put kind of a new skin on it, you can create something similar but different. I mean, that's really the bulk of what we're talking about here.
Basically it. Yeah.
So it's similar but different. So here we're replacing the dog with a pig, and then it's a truffle pig, and then the question comes to mind: what kind of character would have a truffle pig, and blah 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 blah.
Well,
So,
an assassin has a dog, so the chef must have a pig.
Exactly. And it's this thing that's people frown upon. They use there's an overuse of the term ripoff that scares people away from using this strategy. And I think this movie is a great example of that premise with the new skin, which is something that Jamie taught me. It's something I learned from Jamie. And I've actually been able to help a lot of clients because since you taught me this technique, Jamie, what I've noticed is when people often are trying to do that, and then they're like missing the pig, right? Or they're missing
why the original version
worked. And then once they tweak that element and they figure out that, oh, I'm making Poltergeist with a new skin, and they follow the sort of things that worked about the thing that inspired them, they all of a sudden everything pops.
You know what? It's a little bit the same reason in Save the Cat why Blake Snyder came up with the genres, because the genres are an abstraction of this, like Golden Fleece. What's a Golden Fleece? Well, it's like a sports movie at its basics, or it's a quest movie at its basics. What's a Monster in the House? It's a survival horror movie, the skeleton of it. This is just like another level of meat on that skeleton when you do this. And when you say, like, one of my first slides when I teach my class genres, I put up a slide that says, what do all these movies have in common? And I have Bug's Life, and I have, I don't know, Alien, and I have all these movies. And I say they're all ripoffs. And then I say, Alien was pitched as, Jaws in space or something. And Bug's Life is Seven Samurai with bugs. And there's all these great movies that people really like that are like that have been pitched that way. So
it sounds like you guys are talking about a stigma against this, basically.
I think there's a stigma.
But it's not bad writing. It's not bad writing.
This movie is an example. Like, this movie uses that strategy, and that's why it's fucking awesome.
Just like when James Cameron used Fern Gully, wasn't that what it was?
Fern Gully,
or what was the other one? It was the Smurfs.
Dances with Wolves.
Dances with Wolves. Dances with Wolves.
Similar, but those two movies really aren't. Avatar, he probably didn't even think of Dances with Wolves.
I doubt James Cameron ever saw Fern Gully.
Yeah, like it's just kind of a classic thing that you fall into. And again, that is also what the Blake Snyder genres speak to as well.
So you can say, like, Bob? if you're gonna make Pig, you sit down at your typewriter, well, that's really romantic of me, and you say, I want to make a pacifist's John Wick. And then that's where you go from there, right? And that's the new skin. Is like, what is John Wick without violence or a violent protagonist?
What if John Wick was a world-class chef? It's that power of the what if question, right?
Right.
What if John Wick was a world-class chef and the criminal underworld that he had to go under was the Portland culinary food scene? That's what this movie is.
Yeah, no, it is.
You take all the scenes that we get out of that in a John Wick situation, and then you paint them with that new skin, and then you have this movie. I wanted to kind of further teach this for anybody out there who's like thinking about using it, or that many people are going to be like, I've used this many times, but some people, it's news to them. So Die Hard is like the most famous example. Like, and Jamie, when you first introduced this concept to me, you did use Die Hard. So I dug up this article from Den of Geek.
Die Hard's the one that I always heard too, Jimmy.
You heard that too? Yeah.
Kevin Smith actually used to use Die Hard all the time.
Okay.
So for this exercise.
Okay. So I'm gonna pitch you some new skins, and you guys tell me if you can figure out the movie.
Okay. So, Blart Mall Cop.
Die Hard at a mall. Yeah. Die Hard at a boarding school.
Toy soldiers?
Toy soldiers.
Toy soldiers.
I was going to say small soldiers. I was like, that's wrong.
Wait.
Die Hard on a mountain.
Cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger.
Die Hard in Alcatraz.
So The Rock.
The Rock.
With Nic Cage.
Yeah, with Nic Cage.
Die Hard on a commercial airline.
Air Force One. No, commercial airline.
Air Force
what's
One.
the one? Jodie Foster.
Passenger 57.
Yes, Passenger 57.
Jamie.
What was that Jodie Foster movie though? That was kind of like that.
If I win this, I get the next day of the cat book. Right?
You get to write it.
I get to write it.
Oh, Die Hard on a prison plane.
Con Air.
I got that one.
Nick Cage.
Here we go. Nick Cage. Look at all these Nick Cage examples.
Yep.
Die Hard on the president's plane.
Air Force One.
There you go.
Now Jamie's trying to win.
Now, Die Hard at the White House.
White House
Down.
Or Olympus Has Fallen.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, fine.
I don't know.
Die Hard on a bus.
Speed.
Yes. And then Speed on a boat is Speed 2.
Speed 2, cruise control.
Under Siege. Oh,
that is Die Hard on a boat. That's another
Under
one.
Siege is
Die Hard on a carrier on a okay, but also like Jamie, would you agree that you can use this to do multiple skins too? Like, I'll give you an example. Speed on a train with a post-apocalyptic skin is what?
Ice Piercer or Snow Piercer.
Okay, I was gonna say, should I answer? Because I was gonna say that.
Yeah,
I was like, Jamie, do it.
That's how you genre bust. That's how you and look like Jaws with the new skin is like 50 sci-fi channel movies.
Well, you know what? Jaws on the land is what? Jurassic Park, right?
Pretty much.
Jaws with dinosaurs, right?
I think we should just do a spin-off podcast that we just do this.
With the new skin.
I'm like, okay, what's Rocky with rap?
I mean, but this is like when you're
yeah.
Yes.
Rocky with dodgeball.
What is this? Rocky with robots? Real Steel.
Real Steel.
Yeah. So when you're coming up with concepts, I mean, this is like a major part of the idea generation process. I mean, this is how I've come up with endless movies. And even like the franchises are doing it to make like new, like Halloween 28 reboot with a Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise skin is the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie. So
it might work. We don't know.
Yeah, it might work. So it's a great technique with a new skin. Is the premise with a new skin is a great technique to
the next level of that is, and this is kind of going off course here a little bit, is taking the premise but then doing it with a different genre. And that's kind of what this does. That's kind of what this movie does. So if you say like Freaky Friday, but it's a horror movie or something like that. Groundhog Day, but a horror movie.
It's like a genre skin. Yeah.
You could say Galaxy Quest, Three Amigos, and Tropic Thunder.
Yep.
Yeah.
Three different genres, all the same premise, right?
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah. Sci-fi, comedy, Western. Or war Western.
That's awesome. I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah, they're all the same premise. The actors think in the real situation. Yeah.
So it's my main thing to say is don't be afraid to do that. It leads to great movies.
Don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed to do it. It's yeah.
Good. Shame. Yeah.
There's no shame in it.
There's no shame in it.
Let me jump in with my topic here, because I think it'll fit. So concepts and worlds. One of the reasons I really like this movie for instruction is it does another thing that I suggest in my book, Save the Cat Writes for TV.
Available now on Amazon.com.
Available now. I suggest when you come up with TV ideas, especially because TV is a place that most of your pilots are going to be writing samples to try to get staffed. So I believe that you should write, this is true of features too, but maybe a little less so. You kind of have to be more high concept with features. But I think you should come up with worlds you really know, like worlds that you know inside and out. So I don't know if either of these two people are foodies, or they worked as chefs, or they worked in the Portland food industry, or maybe they're just fascinated by it. But a lot of people in TV, I suggest you start with a world, and then you sort of couple it with a plot or so. So let's say you came up with a world, and I'll give you some examples of worlds. in my book, I have a few. I have 9 to 5s, which are jobs, workplaces, things like that. Family matters, so, and these are for TV shows. So there's some things there. But family matters could be any kind of, it could be a real family. It could be a gang, a crew, a group of friends. Locations, specific locations, be they,
A video
countries,
store.
video store, things like that. Absolutely. Growing pains. So kind of those rites of passages that you might go through, like in TV, it would be parenthood, divorce, freaks and geeks, things like that. Blasts from the past, which are your historical or nostalgia plays, lifestyles, and certain ones that are make believe. I also have just subject matters that you just like a lot, like if you were into Bigfoot or something like that, and you research Bigfoot. So in my book, I suggest people weigh them against what I call the franchise types. But for you, for people doing features, I think you can come up with a world that you really love, like somewhere you've worked, the family you grew up with, whatever, and then just take the save the cat genres. That's what I usually suggest. So, the save the cat genres, if you look them up, Golden Fleece, Monster in the House, Rites of Passages, all this stuff, and do a little brainstorm exercise where you couple your world with, okay, I have this world. What's the Golden Fleece version of that world? What's the Monster House version of that world? So try to combine the two things. It's kind of a this meets this. You could do the same thing with John Wick set in the world of Bigfoot or whatever. I don't know. That'd be ridiculous. But
I'd watch it. Yeah.
It's kind of exists as kind of that with
it is exists in that. I was just gonna say you wrote that movie, Jamie.
I was gonna say,
Available
it's kind
now.
of like that. It's kind of from a reverse perspective, but you could do that. This meets this with that as well. So you could take your world and Die Hard set in the world of Portland culinary something, and who knows what that is, but you might come up with a great premise. But it'll also have authenticity because it's a world or a world you've lived in. So anyway, that's my side.
So I'm gonna write a movie about the seedy underbelly of the podcasting world.
Dude,
absolutely.
It takes place in the future.
They steal your Yeti mic, and you go. You have to go kill to get it back.
It's a beloved totem from your past.
It's a moratorium on grief and an exercise on the afterlife. So now let's go to genre expectations, right?
Yeah, that's
cheeseburgers versus 3-course meals. I'm saying the whole thing.
So this show, we talk about cheeseburgers. That's pretty much what we talk about. And
I think I coined that phrase for the show.
You did.
I think you
did.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Well, it's also your logo, so it works. It's got dual meaning.
Yeah, no, it's the thunder grunt. Right.
So, we've sort of been circling around it anyway, this topic. Jamie, you even immediately touched upon it when you were saying how you felt about the movie because you had these expectations going in. And I think we all did about what this movie was based on the fact that it's Nicolas Cage and he's going to seek revenge.
We were expecting Willy's Wonderland.
I actually still haven't seen that.
I haven't seen it either, but that type of
genre
experience. Kind of low level genre stuff.
I kind of got that movie, this movie, and Nobody all mixed up in a bucket.
Nobody, really?
Yeah, the Odenkirk movie, Nobody. I just kind of was thinking they were all kind of the same type of movie in some ways. So.
Nobody was pretty awesome, let me say. Anyway,
Nobody was closer to John Wick if you're looking for that cheeseburger.
Yeah, I mean,
lots of great fight scenes.
But I imagined it right. I imagine it was a cheeseburger.
It was a cheeseburger.
It was totally cheeseburger.
Okay, so the reason I call this movie a 3-course meal is because it's literally structured and states on the screen that it is intended to be a 3-course meal. So I felt like it was fitting.
It works. It tracks both ways, man. It tracks.
It tracks. So Jamie, you've talked about how in the past, David Goyer said, what did he say when he decided when he got hired to write the Batman movie?
Yeah, it always stuck with me because he made a big point in all his interviews to say the first thing they did was made a list of everything people would expect in a Batman movie. And they said, these are the things we have to have. And then everything else we can kind of invent.
We can kind of play with, right?
Yeah.
So here they obviously knew that they were playing with the vengeance genre, and they made a list of all the things that we would expect from the vengeance movie. And that gave them the freedom to figure out how to do something different with it. It's very similar to what we were just talking about with Scream, except Scream pointed out, hey, we know that this is a genre expectation, but here we are going to give you something different. I'm going to use a quote from the director where he talks about that was part of the process. He said, his name is Michael Sarnowski? I get to be the one that messes up the name.
Sarnowski.
Jamie, I feel your pain now. He says, I think genre gives us a shorthand for how to interact with a story and how we expect that story to play out. So within that, it gives us a framework for the types of characters and situations we associate with that. It gives us a lot to fall back on, and that can be great. Sometimes it's nice to not have to do all the legwork yourself. You can use these audience associations and expectations. By the time the genre stuff falls out of the way, the audience is invested enough that you're just with the characters in these quiet moments. It could have gone the other way with Pig. People could have seen it and been like, that's not what I wanted. This was not the genre I wanted. Where's the action? Where's the fighting? Some people say that, but thankfully not too many. So the guy says, that's what
I like how he's also dealing with Nic Cage expectations there.
Right.
Like, it's not just the genre, it's literally the actor too.
Right. And Nic Cage is here.
Yeah. So yeah, where's the pig fight with the lightsaber?
Right. It's coming. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so I just thought this is a great example of how, once again, the importance of the genre expectations, right? The importance of fulfilling them. And we've talked about this in 3 or 4 episodes in a row recently. So I wanted to talk about this book that is I think is a great tool. It's not advertised as a screenwriting book, and that's why I think it's a secret weapon, which we're going to get to. This movie is called, spoiler alert, The Badass Book of Movie Plots, and they basically take 38 genres and they give you all the characters that we would expect in the genre, all the scenarios we would expect in the genre, all the objects we expect in the genre, the stereotypical lines we expect in the genre. And all of those are important because you can play with them. I'll give you an example. This doesn't have vengeance genre, but it has Western revenge film, which is sort of what
it's similar, yeah.
The modern revenge film has sort of evolved from the Clint Eastwood Man with No Name series and those types of stories. Essential lines of dialogue: you're supposed to be dead. How many times did we see that in this movie?
Right.
Essential characters: the loyal steed. Well, that's the pig. It says, don't forget these. A coffin with the main character's name on it. I mean, damn, we go to the mausoleum. And
his name is on it. You're right.
So I didn't even realize that they were playing with a Western revenge genre expectations there when they gave us that. Important locations: the dying farm in the desert. I mean, that's his
where he lives. Yeah.
That's where he lives.
Yeah, that's his residence. Yeah.
The another thing, don't forget the whistling man. I mean, I don't know the Western revenge genre enough to understand that someone whistling in the movie is a trope of the genre, but obviously the filmmakers did because they gave it. So
you're
anyway,
saying that they actively were looking at Westerns when you believe they were actively
I believe that they were, looking at the genre they were playing with. And go ahead,
it's really interesting because when I was watching this movie, and I not even that I was going to bring it up in this podcast, but I kept thinking of Unforgiven, which is a movie I like a lot. And I just thought maybe it was because Nic Cage doesn't talk much. He's kind of the strong silent type, he's kind of
stoic.
like Clint
He's
Eastwood.
stoic.
He's
Yeah.
stoic. He's kind of, but all those things that you just mentioned, that the old farm that he comes from, the thing, they're all things that are in Unforgiven pretty much as well. So it's probably why I was getting some
which is
vibes.
the Western revenge story. Yeah.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's just, once again, proving that this movie did that on purpose. And that's why we feel the way we feel about it.
Is this book you're talking about the one with all the illustrations?
Yes. So it's very, for anyone reading it, again, spoiler alert, the badass book of movie plots. Why we all love Hollywood cliches.
Okay.
So it goes through 38 different genres, and it's very playful. It's not like your standard screenwriting book that has like a bunch of paragraphs and words. It's all visual, it's all art. And and it's just a great, for me, I've used it many times to do the meats exercise and the premise with a new skin exercise, because you can literally go like, okay, well, what if I put the Christmas skin on it, or I put this, so yeah,
that's really cool.
I love it.
To me, that almost seems more helpful than some other writing books,
right?
Just be able to see the outline of the genre, like,
right,
for
exactly,
me would visually be better almost.
And each genre has about 3 to 4 pages just of images that are related to the tropes of the genre. So yeah, very helpful.
Yeah, that's cool, because I don't know how many people would have gotten Western from this. So that's really good, Jimmy. Like, it makes
I think we're gonna even talk about it. There, some of my other talking points are about that too.
Because you know what? It also, I was gonna say, you said Unforgiven. You know what this made me think of? It made me think of like a John Carpenter movie, for some reason.
Which
it translates to how much his movies are like westerns. Thus what you just said. So
it's very good point.
It really tracks.
Even with the tone too.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Concepts and worlds.
Yeah, Jamie kind of pulled that. That's what you
right. That was the section
right?
I was talking about. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I feel like we've been talking about the whiteboard, so I feel like we can breeze past the whiteboard. Yeah, because we've been doing it.
Yeah, this is all whiteboard stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, well, and we did just mention how he's a very stoic man, so let's talk about him, protagonist with few words.
Right. So now that we've sort of explained that this is essentially a movie that's playing with our expectations of vengeance stories, that comes along with a very certain type of protagonist, right? And that is a person, like you guys said, strong silent type, right? Like the man with
like John Wick.
The Clint Eastwood in the Dollars trilogy, like the man with no name.
Arguably, John McClane only speaks when he's spoken to, really.
Pretty much, and he talks to himself.
He talks to himself, yeah.
The Bride and Kill Bill, there's so much of those movies where she's not saying anything. Eric Draven in The Crow.
We're usually dealing with somebody who is either heavily damaged or has led a life of some type, like a heavy life of crime or something like that, where they don't have much they want to talk about.
Speaking to what you were saying before, like they've experienced a lot of loss.
And grief, pain. They've seen a lot of pain, loss. Somebody who's been to war doesn't talk much because they saw the horrors of it. Yeah, but in this case, you're right. It's grief and loss.
Pain. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So it's an example of, if you're going to choose a genre, that's also going to inform what the audience expects from your main character. Mm-hmm. And here they gave us Rob is a man who speaks so little that I was able to pull all his dialogue off of the IMDb quotes.
Oh, wow.
Because other than Where's My Pig, I'm looking for my pig. I'm here to talk about a pig. He pretty much only has like 4 or 5 moments where he's speaking.
And there's really only one giant chunk of text, which is the long story he tells Alex Wolff at the breakfast table.
Yeah, which I love that.
Yeah.
But
I think that, and we'll talk about it more when we get to theme. There's 2 sections. There's the one where he talks to his assistant, where he kind of lays some stuff down, and then, like you say, the one at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's big moments.
So when you are choosing a protagonist with few words, you're going to need to figure out a way to get to know them, and to get them to force them to talk. And the way to do that, there's something we've talked about. It's funny that you just mentioned John McClane, Bob, because we talked about this for the first time in the Die Hard episode.
Okay.
Window characters. So we talked about this in the Dr. Sleep episode. There's a great example of window characters with Rose the Hat has Crow Daddy, and that's how we get to know her, basically, because he's constantly asking her questions and getting her to talk about herself. And so it's basically just one way to use your supporting characters is to make sure that they are a window into your hero. Yes, they can have their own storylines. They can have their own beginning, middle, and ending. They can have their own, arcs like this movie.
Yeah.
Like Amir does. But essentially, when it comes down to it, like the main function of your supporting characters is to give us a window into your main character. And this, if you watch this movie just for that technique, every single scene that Nicolas Cage is in with somebody else, somebody is forcing him to speak. They're pulling words out of him. And that is how we get to know him, about his past, about his present, about how he's feeling about the pig, So
he'll only speak if he knows it will further his quest to get his pig. That's also important, right? Like he won't just speak. It has to be on the quest.
You have to be choosy about
totally on task.
Right, about this person with who speaks so few words. Like, what are you going to put in their mouth, like when they actually open it? And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But yeah, so window characters. This is a great example of how to use them.
Yeah, and I think it's also useful. It's interesting because a lot of times window characters are for the world. That's like to say, what, and I think this character functions, even though this character already knows the basics of the world they're going into. When you have, it's a situation where if you have a story where a character is going into a new world, then you need a side character that can ask questions of the main character. Well, I'm sorry, I have that backwards. If you have a character that's going into a new world as part of the plot, like The Wizard of Oz or something like that, then you're okay because that character is your window character to the world.
Right,
it is you.
The audience surrogate, yeah.
But in this movie's case, Nicolas Cage knows the world and is in the world he's kind of venturing into, and the other character could kind of be like, even though mostly that other character knows the world, doesn't know it the way Nicolas Cage or the dark underbelly of it like Nicolas Cage does. So that character can constantly ask, why are we here? What are we doing? The questions the audience might ask that kind of get bounced around, and that we can kind of learn through that character's eyes as well with the world.
It's interesting that you point that out because it's kind of like thematic now that I hear you say that. Like Amir only knows the superficial.
I was about to say the same thing, Jimmy.
Yeah, like Amir.
He thinks he thinks he's king shit of that world, and the whole movie is him learning he actually has no clue about it.
He has no clue about what this world real world. Yes,
which also plays into his relationship with his father. In that same world,
artificial.
Right? As a random aside, this is completely off the thing. What about that underground fight scene? What do you think about that part?
Yeah,
it's weird. I think if that's the only time the movie maybe stretches its like reality a bit. That's what, maybe the thing that was like on the John Wick whiteboard that they didn't erase.
It does, and it's almost like the question of why he does that and things like that. Like what are they getting out of it? That scene. I didn't totally understand that scene. Like that's the one scene I watched and I'm like, this is going somewhere. This means something and I'm missing it. I'm not quite getting what it
means. He did
really
get information from it. He did get that information from it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think its purpose, like you guys both just said, is less about what's going on there and more about playing with our expectations, because it is the last scene of part one. Like, you know, this has a weird structure, and structure is not on our talking points, and I don't think we need to get into it, but it's sort of, the movie goes to part two after this. And I think it's the moment that the audience thinks this is going to escalate to the John Wick we expected, and instead it subverts it. He does not inflict violence on anyone.
It doubles down on the pacifism.
Right.
He just takes it.
It's very clear right there that he's not going to be beating anyone up. He's not going to be drawing guns or throwing, you know, chef's knives or also, you know, weaponizing the chef's, you know, frying pans against people like the cheeseburger would do. It's like, yeah.
I also, like, part of me also felt with that scene that it made me question the narrator, or, you know what I mean? Or question him for the first time. I was like, oh, maybe he's just insane.
Yeah.
Maybe he's not all there, because why would he approach it like this, you know?
Right.
But then I realized it's saying something about the fact that him getting physically beat, it means nothing to him because he's in more pain emotionally.
He's already
he doesn't care.
He's
about
in
it.
so much pain that he's numb to this. Yeah.
So he'll take a beating and it doesn't matter.
But I mean, look, it's like a great, once again, talking about like instructive, like all three of us were going like, why did that happen? And then like, we're all three of us are like going there like, oh shit, like it's about to get crazy. Well, and then
you guys
it doesn't.
I learned this phrase from you guys, which is superior position, right? Like this whole movie is Nic Cage having superior position to the audience, right? Like,
yes,
the whole time, like the first time you watch this, you're like, why is he doing that? Where's he going? Why is he doing anything? And the Fight Club scene is the biggest moment of that. Like, wait, there's a Fight Club? Why is he going to that? Why does it exist? What is he getting out of this?
Yeah, we're constantly being given intrigue seeds about this and that, and this and that. Yeah, the world. Yeah, like, yeah. No, that Jamie, I almost put that on the talking points about the Fight Club scene, because I think it's really like the pivotal changing moment in this movie where it just goes off in a completely different direction, and that's like sort of the pivotal moment where it shifts and like like you said, Bob, it doubles down. Like, we're not doing that.
It's such a weird scene given the rest of the movie. You know what I mean? That, like, let's say Nicolas Cage wasn't in this. Let's say it was George Clooney or something, and we never expected a Nicolas Cage movie to come out of this. It's such a weird scene that I almost wanted to Google it to see if it really existed, because it's so strange. And it's like all these angry restaurant workers are there just that want to punch, and they put his name up on the board and they want to beat him up. I mean, it's like
Fight Clubs do exist in real life, whether not because of the movie or what. I don't know that, but I know that they do exist. People that work in restaurants have notoriously shitty jobs, and the patrons are terrible. I could believe they need to let it out after work.
Yeah, man.
I don't know. I mean,
I just think it's a great whiteboard. They were like, look, we're doing the John Wick seedy Portland culinary world underworld.
It's a little weird. It's a little weird, but he didn't start flying or something. It's not like It's not Nic Cage didn't walk down there and there was a giant like alien race or something like that. So
I mean, look, we've talked about this scene for like 5 minutes. That's how good it is.
I think it was on the Mandy whiteboard and they moved it over.
Moved to it.
Yeah.
Because I could see in Mandy, there's like, I have to go to the underground restaurant Fight Club thing and kill some people.
Yeah.
No, but
It also kind of, because of the tonal change of it, it makes you question what the third act is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It keeps you off balance. It's like, maybe this is going to eventually go to John Wick territory, or maybe it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there could be a long blog think piece just about that scene. It'll be studied for years to come.
Put it on your Medium, Jamie.
Yeah, I will.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that kind of is a perfect segue. The Fight Club scene is a perfect segue to talk about Robin, right? Goals, rewards, and stakes.
Mm-hmm.
The power of
failure. Yes. Jamie, so I thought this would be a good time to talk about your drawing the goal exercise.
Yeah. So the one thing I really like about this movie and find it very instructive for spec screenwriters is it has a very simple concept and premise, but then it's really a character study at the same time. Like I think that's what I love about this for new screenwriters. Like if you're like, what should I write next? Find a really simple story that deeply explores a world and a character. But so first of all, how do you find a simple story? I think the best way is you go back to story DNA. You pick a hero, you have a strong goal with obstacles in the way and big stakes. So in this case, we have Robin as the hero. His goal is to find his pig. The obstacle in the way is the mystery of it, the people that are between him and the pig.
Who done it?
And who done it. And the stakes are really the love between will he ever see the pig he loves again? Is really it. Now, first we think it's more about truffles, but well, kind of. So when you're picking character goals, though, the one thing I run into a lot, and I think Jimmy does as well, is the simple word for him is intangible goals. Like I'll say, hey student, what's your, and that's what I call my students. I just say, hey student.
Hey student.
Like, student one. I give them numbers. They
Sign up for the Save the Cat seminar now.
Student 77. So student 77, tell me your story. And they'll be like, well, it's about a student who wants to be happy or something like that. Or it's about a student who wants to feel better, or, so they're very intangible. They're hard to connect with.
Abstract.
Yeah. So originally, like something I came up with was give me a goal that I could take a picture of when they achieve the goal. Like I found the pig, here's the pig, that's a goal I could take a picture of. But feeling Robin get over grief is hard to take a picture of. But the way to translate that, if you want to have a story about grief, is maybe the way Robin thinks he can get over grief is by finding the pig or something. That's not what this movie's about.
That's not what this, but yeah, it's example. Yeah.
If your goal is to make Robin happy, give me something tangible that you think that character will make them happy. So I've modified that a little because my student 77 never seems to get the picture thing, right? So I'd say, give me a picture. 77. Yeah, and they just show Robin smiling, and they're like, see, they're happy, they're smiling. And I was like, yeah, that's not really what I mean. So the way I've thought of describing it now is give me a finish line. Like let's say Robin's goal is to run faster than everybody. That's fine. Run faster is fine, but it doesn't have a finish line. How long does he have to run faster? Just for a second, just out of the gates for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, all his life. But if you give me a finish line and say, Robin needs to cross this goal to prove he's faster than everybody else. And Robin doesn't have to do this, but Robin has to find the pig. Give me something I can take a picture of when they cross the finish line. And again, not just a smiley face. Give me a finish line that proves they are that intangible thing, if you have one of these intangible goals. So anyway, that's my goal.
Yeah. And it's great. I think that's a very useful exercise. Can you draw crossing the finish line? It sounds so simple, but so many people have a really hard time articulating what it is that the character has to do when they're coming up with stories.
I think you guys have said before, it's a visual medium. Mm-hmm. You got to take a picture of it. If you're writing a book, you might be able to write about somebody becoming happy because they can say it in their head on the page. But in a movie, we can't read minds. So
and we have to have something to root for.
To root for, and
yeah, and we have to be able to measurably track getting there to that moment. And if it's not visual, then it's really hard to connect with the character as all these things are happening throughout the story and they're overcoming obstacles. If you can't visually track how close they are or how much further they are from achieving the goal, then it's really hard to resonate with the audience. So I agree, Jamie. This is it's a really instructive, sometimes simple is better, right? And sometimes if you have very simple story DNA, you can then do a lot of complex, weird stuff around that simple, those simple elements. And this is a great example. It's
That's
just
where,
such a
like,
simple
it's
goal.
like where MacGuffins come in, right? That's
yeah,
yeah.
it's
You
pretty.
get your
It's very
MacGuffin and then
similar.
build around that.
But a simple
They got to get the
MacGuffin
Holy
and then-
Grail, and
yeah.
then usually
everything else.
happens around that. Yeah,
Right,
How-
but at its core, Raiders is very simple. Yeah,
right.
yeah,
Well, that'd be Last Crusade. Just
yeah, yeah. Oh shit!
That's the
Oh
Holy
man,
Grail.
fail
That's
on
it.
my end.
Now Jamie's mad.
Okay, Jamie, Jamie and Bob.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, speaking on failure, because we've talked about failure a couple times when a character fails to achieve the goal. We've talked about that a couple times in this show. The Mist comes to mind.
The Big Lebowski.
We haven't done Big Lebowski yet.
He doesn't get his rug back.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just talking about like on this show, like episodes
on this
where
show. Okay.
you the three of us have discussed it before.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
When do you think a writer should choose to have the character fail? Like, when do you think
it depends
you
on
should
theme.
make that choice? Does it depend on genre? Does it depend on theme? What do you guys think?
I mean,
Yeah, I agree with. I think theme is part of it. I
Yeah.
think I always, I'm a big fan of having movies that have. Again, when I say I'm a big fan, I like all kinds of movies. I like movies that are nihilistic, even. But I'm a big fan when I'm writing. Like Seven is the one I always want to talk to you about with you guys, because we've never done Seven.
we'll do Seven.
We'll do it.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yes.
That's the one I enjoyed discussing about nihilism, but I always feel that there has to be some hope in the story or something. Like we have to leave the movie instead of just saying the world's crappy, no matter what you do, everything sucks and you'll fail. Like, and a lot of Student 77 writes that story a lot. A lot of my students come in and think that's like edgy or clever or whatever. I'm just gonna have, life sucks and then you die, and no matter how hard you try, you're screwed. And that's life,
Parasite.
And there are stories like that. So, but I think you have to figure out what the win is. And in this case, usually it's like the arc is the win. The character arc is the win. This isn't that case. This is not that case. We'll talk about that in a second.
We're about to get there.
But I think he changed, and this is I can't help but step into the arcs.
Dude,
talk.
step into it.
It's
That's
okay.
fine.
Step into it. Yeah.
Step into it. We'll backtrack.
Yeah, I think because he changed the world, he changed the other people arced, that there's a win there. There's hope in the world.
Absolutely.
And I think even though he lost his pig and he feels this grief, just like he lost his wife, he's learned the lesson about life that he needs to learn. He knows what kind of makes him whole or what's missing and can't be fixed. I think he's kind of already won the game in some ways, mentally or arc-wise.
I was going to ask you guys,
you don't think
go ahead,
that,
Bob.
Well, I was going to say, my only pushback on that, Jamie, is I almost feel like he doesn't arc at all, because his actual actions of the movie, right when his pig is stolen, he knows exactly what that pig means to him, and he's also fully aware that the pig is not his wife and will not fix anything, but he still wants it back.
I see.
You know what I mean? I don't think he
I agree.
changes from the beginning to the end.
No, that is
Alex Wolff
actually
does,
what I'm
though.
saying. Yeah,
Alex Wolff changes because of him. Yeah.
No, what you and I are saying the same thing. I agree.
Okay.
I agree. I don't think he changes. I think he's got it figured out before the movie starts. I think he's whole, and and it doesn't mean he doesn't have a huge wound or whatever, but he has that wound because he has it all figured out.
Yeah.
It's like that's why
he's broken, but fully aware of his situation. Like he
Fully
knows
aware.
he's broken, and he does.
I was going to ask you guys, do you guys think? I was going to ask you two things related to this, and then we can talk on a grander scale about Arc of Awesomeness. Do you think? And I think you guys have kind of already answered it. Do you think that even though it's clear that Robin is like in constant pain when we meet him, And that's why I want to read on the page. I'd love to see what the page says. Do you think he's content? I think he is when we meet him.
When we meet, yes. As he's as content that he could possibly
be.
Like,
even though he's in pain.
Yes. Like like I said, he can't be fixed. This is as best as it's gonna get.
He's already been changed forever.
It's funny though, the way the story works, and this is really unique. Like, I can't think of too many stories that work this way. We get a picture of him in the beginning and we think he's broken. And the movie reveals that he's not broken.
He's enlightened.
Yeah, he's enlightened. It's a very, I can't think of too many movies that do a story like that. But just by the way he looks, by the way he lives, he's got a friendship with a pig or love for a pig. He seems like he's broken and needs to be fixed, and he's going to be fixed through the story. But instead, we realize, like the characters around him realize, that he's the one that's enlightened and has the answers. He's the mentor in this.
Yep, he's teaching it.
That's what Arc of Awesome is. In most things, when you have a character arc, the character, through a mentor or a helper character or relationship, learns about themselves. In this case, in the Arc of Awesome or Flat Arc, he teaches the people around him something to be more whole.
And the audience.
I mean, specifically, the scene that comes to mind is him basically telling his former employee with his new fancy weird restaurant that deconstructs food how it's all just a lie and it doesn't mean anything.
Yep.
And it's totally true. And then he changes that guy forever because the guy remembers he left his dreams for a hollow, for fame.
And the amazing thing he does there, because that scene could have twisted another way when he has that.
Yeah.
Because that thing could have been a thing where nothing means nothing. It's all waste of time.
It's not.
But he says, there's only a few things, and this is a good message for writers out there too, right? There's only a few things in life that you're lucky if you find something you care about, basically. And if you find that, don't waste the hope. Other stuff.
There it is.
Just, you got it. You got the thing. So do the thing and don't worry about this other nonsense around you.
It's also him talking about the pig without saying it, right?
Exactly.
The last thing he cares about is the pig.
Yep. It's a meaningful connection.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's pure and authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly.
And the guy, as successful as he is, looking at this guy's bloodied and looks a mess and is obviously had a downfall of sorts. We see it resonate with him that's truth. There's truth there,
But also, and really bouncing off that, what that shows is that guy's success is meaningless because he's fake, because he's inauthentic. He's reached this success that everyone in the room is envious of him, except for Robin, because Robin knows he's fake. Therefore, he's a failure. He's not the success that he looks like. And so I think that's weaved into the theme itself.
You also get the sense that there was a time where Robin would have fallen to the same type of life.
Worst case past self. Yep.
Yeah, right. Like that might have even happened back in the day for him. And he realized it after his wife died, and he realized how hollow it was or something.
I think that's what the villain does. The villain is a good example of that too. Like if Robin had made all the wrong choices, Robin would have become Darius, the guy who kidnapped his pig.
Right. And he's also lost his wife.
Yeah. It's exactly. They're circus mirrors, man.
Yeah, they're circus mirrors.
We're the same. We're the same, you and I.
Yep.
The old we're the same, you and I.
But yeah.
Well, we could talk about. Is that all you wanted to say about the villain, the unconventional?
So we sort of we skirted past a little bit about what I wanted to say about. You guys kind of answered for me the failure, when to choose it. Depends on
the ticking clock thing.
Yeah, I was gonna get into I was gonna give an example of. Oddly, this is the second time it's come up in this episode, Dodgeball. So I don't know if you remember the original ending of Dodgeball, and this is on the DVD. They lost, and they put it out there, and they tested it with the audience. Everyone involved in the movie wanted it to end with them losing. And it absolutely tanked in the test audience. And I think it's a testament to like, because that's a cheeseburger.
Yes, that's excellent.
That's not an art. That's not an art film.
We look at Rocky, the Bad News Bears. Lots of spoilers here, I guess, if you haven't seen these 40-year-old plus movies, 50-year-old movies. Those movies, while they didn't really make cheeseburgers as cheesy as they do now. You know, they had a little bit more reality mixed in them. And I think the one advantage you get in this movie by having that failure, the whole thing feels a little more true. You know, we feel
authentic.
We could have given him his pig back. He could have said, "Here he is. He's in the closet." He runs out and they give a hug, and something wouldn't have felt right because he wouudn't have lived the truth he's saying if he got the pig back in some way.
We might not learn the lesson, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna get into, but it's just this. The power of failure is both like from an audience standpoint, but also from a writing standpoint. It's really important that if you're going to choose that your character is going to fail, that it fits like the genre and the theme and it fits the story, right? Because I've read many scripts where it doesn't work. And that's because of these things that we said, where the writer has chosen like, well, I'm going to have him lose. And it's like, well, this isn't the, the script I'll be reading is like, well, this isn't the type of movie where the audience needs them to lose. They need them to win in order to feel what you're aiming for them to feel overall. So yeah, like you said, if Robin had succeeded, then it would have felt inauthentic. I love that, Jamie. That's perfect.
And I mean, I think it's a lesson for student 77 as well, because they think being nihilistic and saying, and just kind of giving a failure where there's usually a win is kind of the cool thing, the edgy thing.
Reverses expectation.
Yeah, but I think the magic is if you can, life is sad and hard. I mean, it is. So if you can somehow mix the sad and hard feelings that we all feel with the hope, I think that's where the magic happens. So you can give us a taste of real life. And I think that's what Student 77 is trying to do in some ways. But give us that little bit of hope as well. Give us the positive. Give us the something to send us out.
I mean, the one thing we already said, though, the little bit of hope is that he can still care.
Yeah. That's another thing I wanted to ask you guys. I skipped past that. Do you guys think that Robin has formed a meaningful relationship? He gains a meaningful relationship with Amir by the story's end. Do you think I think they're probably going to be closer after this? Like he says, see you next Thursday.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like the way the movie ends with him alone listening to his wife and taking his shoes off, that doesn't feel like that ending is saying that to me.
Like that there's buddy love coming after this.
I don't
buddy love story of pig
while he's in
Pig Part 2.
Like I said, I think he's enlightened, but he's also broken. And the ending of the movie says to me he's going to stay broken, and now he's broken without a pig.
No, certainly Amir. Certainly Amir, who has complete disrespect for him in the opening, is going to have a different feeling for him later on.
Agree. Yeah. I'm talking about Robin's perspective.
Yeah,
I don't think Robin's going to be reaching out to be a buddy.
Gotcha.
But he might, he might talk to me a little more. I don't know.
I think they had a pretty formative series of events together. And I think they made the meal together. I think they experienced, and by the end, like Amir is grieving with Robin, not only for the loss of the pig, that like in a meaningful way, right? He doesn't just see it as a means to an end. There's a pivotal moment there before we get into the part 3 of the movie. It's the scene right before it where Robin gives him the opportunity to basically is like testing him for the audience, like to walk away. He says like, I don't need the pig to get truffles. And that's like a big reveal to Amir and to the audience. And Amir says, then why are we doing all of this? Yeah. And he says, because I love her. And then the story makes it clear, like Amir is just as emotionally invested in the rest of the journey, even though Amir knows that it's not going to help him with his own personal stakes anymore, like with his livelihood, with his truffles. He's just in it to help Nicolas Cage recover that meaningful relationship, you know?
And I think Amir does grow to care about him.
Yeah. Learns to care more, right, Jamie? That's one of your core arcs.
Learns to care, but it's the way the actual, I mean, you know, we go by the actual edit, right?
Right.
The way the movie, for me, if that was the case, that him and Amir were going to form a new relationship and Amir would become essentially the new pig, sort of, the new friend, right? I feel like the movie wouldn't have ended how it did. That's all.
I think you're right. That's a good point.
I feel like it would have ended with them.
They're both alone mourning.
They're both alone mourning, and that's how it ends, and that's just kind of the statement. I think he would have gotten in his car and let him drive him home. He
would have let him drive him right.
And they would have looked at it. They would have looked at each other or something, and I don't know.
Yep, the proof is in the movie right there.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did want to talk about the clocks real quick. I only have one really quick thing. So another weird, unconventional thing that if you say it on paper, I'm like, there's no way this is gonna work. Like I have 3 examples of ticking clocks to compare the 3, right? The cheeseburger experience versus this. Like typically when Jamie just talked about like your story DNA, the hero has a deadline for which they can achieve the goal. And if they don't achieve the goal before the time is up, then they fail. And so we feel urgency, right? And we've talked many episodes about it doesn't have to be a literal clock. Like Marty McFly has a photo, and every single time we see the photo, there's less of him. That is a version of a ticking clock mechanism. So to compare the cheeseburger experience versus this 3-course meal, in the Mission Impossible 6 episodes, I didn't have to do any work. I just cut and paste from old notes. There are 36 deadline updates where we get 36 moments where we learn how much time is left before the various clocks are up, right? So we feel this ever-present urgency. In Little Miss Sunshine, we get, it's an indie darling, right? But it still has this deadline. We get 14 moments where we get a clock update. Here's how much time is left. So we feel this urgency for her to get to the the pageant. Pig, this is like really weird because I just sent you guys a document where I had all these like ticking clock techniques. I don't know if you guys remember, and this wasn't on there. There's no clock. It's literally like the complete absence of an update, oddly, since it feels like she's dead from the moment they pick her up. The complete absence of a clock here somehow creates this ever-present urgency. It's weird. I love it. Like what?
I think the way, can I give my opinion on why?
Yeah, that's why I wanted to. What do you guys think about this?
I think it might work because of what we were talking about earlier was I think because we're constantly intrigued by his superior position that it kind of makes it feel like the movie's moving forward and it has a kind of goal. Even though we know that there isn't really, that there's no hope there for the pig to be coming back. Like, he brings you through the movie. The ticking clock will be revealed by Nic Cage in my mind at some point.
Okay.
Like, he had to do this before this happened because he's telling us everything else that's going on. Okay. But that's the only thing I could think that why it works. Because you're right, it's weird.
Yeah, because like, so you're expecting eventually he'll find the clock. And
since it's riding on his shoulders, the character of Robin's shoulders, I'm with the movie. I'm not saying I feel the ticking clock, but I'm with him.
Okay.
So he carries the movie.
So that's why you feel his urgency.
Urgency. Yeah. So I'm with his urgency to get the pig back. Yes.
I was going to say, and I think John Wick does something similar because I'm not sure that it's. I can't remember John Wick well enough, but just the simple premise of it is like, well, if they killed his dog and he's getting revenge, he doesn't necessarily have to get revenge today.
Right.
He could go hiding and then come back.
The why now is sort of irrelevant.
And the why now is his anger.
It's his anger.
Yeah.
He's pissed.
So that's like a genre thing. Okay.
They also come to his house and attack him, and that's sort of the why now is they try to kill him in his own home.
Kill Bill would be a similar thing. You know, she doesn't have to do it like one after the other. She could take her time and do a thing, but she goes right after him. I also think so for another version, another premise skin, you could say this is Taken with a pig or something like that.
It is. I think that's right. Yeah.
Now Taken, I'm sure they do a little dance like, after 24 hours, you will never find her again, or something
clock,
like
I'm
that.
sure.
There's probably some clock, but really just kidnapping in general feels like there is an urgency, like every second counts in a kidnapping.
Yeah, like in real life, like when it reminded me, it made me think of like in reality, when someone goes missing, there's like the Amber Alert, right? And then no one finds that person. It sort of always feels like there's imminent danger, right? Like there's like sort of always urgency to find them, even though there's been no updates about the progress of getting closer to finding them. So maybe it's like it's sounding like what we're circling around here is it's really unique to this genre, to this vengeance genre.
I would say even what Jamie said, to kidnapping.
To kidnapping, yeah.
You kidnap somebody in a movie, then you know that at any moment they could be killed.
Yeah.
The pig could die at any moment for any reason.
So the clock is irrelevant.
Yeah.
As long as the person is still missing. Yeah.
Right. You have to get to your goal as a short a time as possible because something is immediately about to die.
And then okay, that's good. Because I was trying to like figure out like why it works. And like it made me think of oddly Groundhog Day, which is also there's no clock. It's an infinity time loop. So the absence of a deadline somehow makes you feel like urgency for him to end
Here's the thing. Think about it this way. And I think it's something in human nature, because I think on one hand, science or maybe criminology would tell us that every second, like I remember reading the book Homicide was based off of, and they basically said in that book, if you don't solve the case in the first 24 hours, you're screwed. You're not going to solve it. Like there are some cases that get solved, cold case, but most of them get solved the first 24, 48 hours. But I think there's something that's human nature, because I'll put you through this mental exercise. Imagine if your dog went missing.
Yeah.
You would drop everything to go find that dog. There's no, oh, well, I can find him next week. There's no, well, they'll show up in 6 months. Tonight, we're driving. We're going around.
We're doing everything.
And every hour that passes, the dog could be running farther away from the house, right?
Right.
I mean,
that's right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the same's true of if your kid goes missing, they don't show up that night. Anything. There is no rest. So I think there's kind of a human nature ticking clock when your loved one is missing.
Okay, so it's unique to the scenario and really okay, that's also cool. I just think it's really instructive that there's no clock, but there's constant urgency. Also, I think that's unique.
On top of what you said, the people who took the pig have been shown to be violent. They come into it, they barge into his house and hit him with a bat.
Right.
So the fact that we already know, like, his pig wasn't gently taken from the yard and driven away.
So there's there's imminent danger.
There's imminent danger. We've been shown the danger happening.
So that creates the urgency.
That creates it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I would not, if you had said there's going to be no deadline and no updates about like when the pig, about the pig, you're going to feel ever-present urgency, I'd be like, oh, but hearing us talk about why, that makes sense.
I think what speaks to Bob's point too, if the pig was purely a means to get truffles, then maybe it would feel that way. It's just some tool in the shed. But I think Cage's urgency isn't about how am I going to make money? It's about
I need to connect with the pig I love. Yeah.
Right.
Cool.
The opening tells us he loves the pig more than any other being on this planet. Right?
Yeah.
There it is. There's the urgency that Jamie was talking about with finding your kid or your dog.
Perfect. Cool. Well, I learned something from that.
Nice. Are we, I think if I'm not mistaken, are we on theme lesson?
Let's go to the lesson. Yeah,
Is that-
I feel like we talked about the villain enough. It does some weird stuff with the villain too. Do you want to talk about the villain for a minute? It's weird too.
If you want, yeah. You have
Yeah.
something to say.
Yeah. Look, well, I wanted to compare. We just saw Matrix
4. Yeah.
right? And it does all the same things that this movie does with concern to the villains, and yet it works. And I wanted to figure out why.
You pig works.
Like pig works and
Pig
Matrix
works.
4 doesn't. Let's figure out why. I think it basically comes down to the scenario. Like the big question is, who has my pig? Well, there's tension, or there's a lot of tension around who the villain is, but we don't meet the villain. We don't even learn who the villain is for 56 minutes. Number one, so we have an off-screen mystery villain, which is weird and doesn't usually lend itself to a good story. Then we don't meet the villain until 60 minutes. So we don't actually see who the villain is for 60 minutes, which also tends to, like, imagine if you didn't meet Vader for an hour, like what that experience would feel like. And then we don't actually ever hear like his villain's plan, but I guess since it's implied that they're stealing it to gain truffles, it sort of takes care of itself. And it's simple, right? The story DNA is so simple that we don't really need to know anything other than they took the pig to get truffles. Simple as that. But it's just it does 3 really weird things with a villain that typically we've talked about movies that don't work and do these very things. And I just wanted to ask you guys, like, what you thought about that, like why it works.
You think it works because if it were just the things you were saying and it had no subtext with the villain, it wouldn't work.
Right.
Like the villain has, like you said, it has to be a mirror image of Robin. Yeah, he's a guy who's lost his life and he made the opposite choices that Robin did. Robin went to hide, and this guy decided he's going to take over the world.
Yeah, that's good.
Right?
You know what? You know what's interesting about it? All these examples keep popping into my head, but they all show more villain. Because I was like, I think the reason maybe it works is because in some movies the villain drives the story. It's the villain's attack.
Cheeseburger.
In a cheeseburger. Yeah. So it's almost reactive. The hero has to react to the villain's moves. In this movie, after the villain does the initial thing, and much like John Wick or something like that, the hero is driving the act. It's like a relentless pursuit. It's like, I'm going to get at the thing. And it's this impossible thing. So in this movie, if all of a sudden the end was, Gordon Ramsay had the pig or something and was holding it, it would be, I'd be okay with that. Like, because it's more about his pursuit and not about like some big twisty
stopping and yeah. Stopping a bigger plan. Yeah.
So this movie actually, in some weird sort of way, surprised me when the father was the one. It wasn't a huge surprise. It wasn't like, the end of The Sixth Sense or anything. But I was like, oh, okay, they're doing the conventional thing with this in some ways. It's
the most conventional choice in the movie, really.
Yeah, because there's not many choices. I mean, you could go back to the crackheads in the beginning or whatever. You could go back to there's not many choices in this movie. There's only like 3. It could be his friend did it, his father did it.
Right. It's simple.
It's almost like the Scooby-Doo choice in some ways. It's the guy that almost had to do it.
You really are.
But I was thinking like the examples I was going to give, I think all do show the villain, if I could remember. But a movie like, Commando, which is Taken in some ways.
Yeah,
it's more
you
about
meet that villain early. Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like that villain is influencing things too much. It feels more like Arnold's coming for him. Like I'm going to get you. Even though we do introduce it, Kill Bill. Again, it feels like she's coming, even though the villain's there. It's like
we don't meet Bill till the end of the second movie.
Yeah,
she's coming for him. Taken again is much like Commando. They just kind of introduce the villain and give you a little twist. But it's more like Liam Neeson gets off the airplane and starts beating people up, and it's like, okay, that's where we're at. So I don't know. There's something about, I think, because the hero is in this relentless pursuit.
Okay.
It's almost like they're the villain. It's like the villain is the one quaking in their boots.
They're
like,
upsetting the world Yeah, they're the one who's upending the world.
Yeah.
Like Robin is doing all of the obstructing and the upending of every scenario who goes into. He's the one who's
Robin could have just stayed in his cabin and not cared.
Right.
He didn't even need to pay for truffles.
The world would have
kept going.
Stayed the same.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oddly, so his arc of awesome is an antagonistic presence to the rest of the world. So maybe that's the answer. I don't know. It's another thing this movie does that is really unconventional, but it works really well.
When we were talking about Arc of Awesome, I was almost thinking of it in those terms. I was like, if you wrote this movie from the pig stealer's perspective, and he went through an arc of trying to cover this up and doing a thing, it would almost be like Fargo or something. There's the bumbling.
Yes, like Fargo. It would be a lot like Fargo.
And
William H. Macy's. Oh, I don't know what I'm gonna do now.
Right.
He's coming for me.
And Marge does an arc in that. He does an arc either, but it's a tragedy because he does an arc. He ends up in prison. So.
To add to what you were saying about hey, he's the antagonist, the whole thing about how he says he remembers every meal he's ever made, and then the whole sequence of him making the meal just to bring up that guy's own grief, that's like megalomaniacal on an emotional level. It's totally devious.
So strong.
That's like something a villain would do.
It's
like Hannibal.
Yeah, like Hannibal or something. It's like that's like crazy levels.
But he's doing it for the opposite reason. He wants that guy to remember his meaningful relationship.
Right.
He's trying to get him to feel.
The act of doing that is almost diabolical.
Yes.
In
a way.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
good.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Now we're on theme and lesson.
Yes.
I believe
The big question.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all been circling around it. What do you guys think the theme of this is? What I thought we'd do is kind of talk about it, and then the director did the work for us and said in his own words what the theme is.
Oh, he already said it?
Yeah.
What he said.
What he said.
Okay.
But
Jamie, yeah.
Jamie.
It's interesting. The thing that resonated with me the most is that talk with the person and the assistant chef. It's funny because the end probably is where the theme is, but that's the thing that resonated with me the most is like when you find that thing and that's the thing and you just hold on to it. Like it's almost like that is the secret to life, So in some ways, in some ways I'm circling more almost around that, but that doesn't have the grief and loss.
What is the wording he says? He said, you find the thing you care about.
I mean, I've got the
that's
Robin.
the theme statement.
I've got the Robin monologue. Right. Well, he says to the chef that he fired, he says, Derek, why do you care about these people? And that's important. He uses his name because he remembers everyone and he makes everyone feel remembered. And important. Derek, why do you care about these people? They don't care about you. None of them. They don't even know who you are because you haven't shown them. Every day you wake up and there'll be less of you. You live your life for them and they don't even see you. You don't even see yourself. We don't get a lot of things to really care about. They're not real. You get that, right? None of this is real. The critics aren't real. The customers aren't real because this isn't real. You aren't real. So that's what he said. That's the whole monologue.
We don't get a lot of things to really care about. I feel like that's almost a theme statement.
Yeah, it's kind of almost ignoring those other things that we put all our attention into instead of paying attention to that thing when it reveals ourselves that is real. Like that to me is the lesson he teaches that guy. I'd have to think about it. Is that the lesson he teaches the villain?
Is it the lesson he teaches the villain, or is it the lesson he teaches the audience? Yeah.
Yes.
I was circling around authenticity, and I was really surprised by the director's answer we'll get to. Only that, like, I know I agree with both of you guys that seems to be like the pivotal moment. And even there's an interview out there. It's the only interview I could find where Nic Cage talks a little bit about this movie. And he said that in the editing room, the production company, one of them, because there's like 7, tried to get them to cut that line because they thought it was too on the nose. We don't really get a lot of things to care about in life. And Nicolas Cage was like, that was the line that made me want to make this movie.
Yeah.
I read that line in the script, and that is why I signed on for that line, because I felt like the whole movie we could talk about that. So even
you're saying Nicolas Cage, that's the theme.
Yeah, for Nicolas Cage, that is the theme.
Okay.
For me, like, I feel like there's like another one too, which is like every scene is about authenticity, right? Like, but maybe authenticity is something to do with that. Like if you find the thing you love, then you'll be real, you'll be living an authentic life, right? Whereas if you spend your time on things that don't matter to you, then that's not a life worth living. Because like every scene, like Robin is showing people to be inauthentic through his unapologetically being himself, right? Like, and then the most memorable moments in the story are like with the kid, right? Like he meets this kid, and the kid has no reason to be fake, and the kid's like, "What happened to your face?" You know, like we as adults might not be so real and be like, "Hey, dude, like, what happened to your face?" Like, but this kid immediately is like, "What happened to your face?" And they have like a really honest, weird conversation, and it's so weird because the kid is so authentic, because when you are that age, you have no reason, you haven't learned that you need to be fake.
Yeah.
You know, that there are situations that might make you be fake. So I was circling around something to be like authenticity leads to like meaningful relationships and contentment. But
before you read the director's statement,
okay,
the pushback I'd give to all of us right now, if I'm thinking of it correctly, would be the nihilistic earthquake speech.
Yeah, that's
because like you have to point out the fact that in this movie he basically says one day the earth is gonna die.
Yeah,
and all humans on earth are gonna die, and none of this is gonna matter. So that plays in. I don't know if that pushes back on the two things we said here a little bit.
Maybe it like it sort of supports though. So you have to find the things to really care about and care about them.
Care about it now, because it could all go away,
because you're going to lose them, right? Which is you know, another point to talking how much this is about loss and grief, because that's really like, yeah,
find what you care about before the earth explodes.
Yeah. Basically.
Okay.
It's not a funny thing, but I don't know.
It's not funny.
I found it funny that
real knee slapper
that we're saying that. A real knee slapper. Pandemic time.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what the director says. We need to dig down and find our passions. We need to dig down and find the things that connect us as human beings, and stop using superficial methods to express who we are and how we bond with others. We should acknowledge that there is a core that unites us as people. Sometimes that core comes from really sad, dark places, but we need to see that and share that in order to move forward. Hopefully, Pig is one of the movies that encourages people to see the shared humanity in others. We have to use things to guide our behavior and to guide what we want to pull our limited time into. We just get worse as we get older at identifying what our passions are. We're trained to do things that are productive or acceptable. We lose track of things that we really care about. And it's on us to try and dig down, figure out what those things are again, or to find new things to care about for the first time. So, yeah. I mean,
man, I'm surprised that guy has a Twitter account.
He's got a lot to say, but I thought it's worth bringing into the conversation since he did the work for us.
I mean, a lot of that, I think everything we said fits in there somewhere, right?
I think he just did a more wordy version of it.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. It sounded very wordy, which doesn't surprise me, given what this movie is.
I assume that's not something he wrote. He was talking. Right?
He was interviewed. It's an interview on the. I said it earlier. Rewind, listener, if anybody wants to look it up. I just typed in his name and Pig.
It was on the Shrimp Night podcast.
Yeah. I interviewed him. I already talked to him. No,
so I think that's measurable. Like, you leave the movie feeling that. Do you think he he proves that he proves that to Amir? I guess so, yeah. Do you think Amir walks away feeling that way?
I think it's a good question. Amir definitely changes because of what he sees from his father.
Mm-hmm.
He probably the first time he ever saw his father vulnerable or cry.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And that's because he got Robin diabolically got him to tap into emotions about something he truly cares for, which is his wife. Yeah. So that circles around that same theme. Yeah. It's not really, it's not messy, but it's not there unless you look for it.
Well, the one thing I remember Jamie always says is, you can plan your theme before you start writing, but sometimes you just find it while you're writing, right?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you said that on a few episodes, Jamie.
Yeah, and that's why it's not always easy to just state in a single sentence, because it's more this thesis kind of thing that floats out there that you kind of...
That we're feeling here and there as we watch the story. Yeah.
The way the director described it and why it was so wordy and how it encompassed a lot of things. I think if you asked me the theme of most of my stuff or something, it would probably come down to a similar kind of... It would be
like a paragraph. Yeah.
It'd be hard to write the log line. It's one of the harder things to do when you analyze screenplays and stuff it's the interesting thing is if you analyze screenplays or movies like we do, I think it's almost essential. Like everything else should coexist with it, but it's actually the part a lot of people skip because it's hard. I think or I don't know. It's like the hardest part when you.
It is the hardest part. Yeah, and there's a lot of usually we're guessing, but the director helped us out here.
Are you saying like most people when writing a movie like this would make the theme like "Don't kidnap pigs," and not instead of making it about all that other stuff we just said, and then you have this hollow movie that doesn't mean it. It's all plot.
The cherry on top. Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I once sat in a in the Austin Film Festival. I sat in a discussion with Shane Black and Scott Rosenberg, and Scott Rosenberg, who wrote tons of movies. You can look up Scott Rosenberg. Among them, a lot of Nicolas Cage movies. I think he wrote he did a draft of The Rock and Con Air and things like that. And he swore he never did theme, right? And Shane Black was totally busting on him. He's like, well, what about that thing in this movie? And he's like, well, that was just to make the characters do the, and he's like, that's theme. And the guy was like, oh, I guess it is. So I think there are some writers that approach it. They know how to do character. They know how to do arc. They know how to do meaning. They don't think consciously that they're doing a theme. So, but then they end up doing a theme or something that could be interpreted as a meaning or deeper meaning.
I mean, if you do a good character and a good arc, the theme will be there for some people.
It'll grow out of it.
It'll grow out of it like a tumor.
Yeah.
Right.
It was funny in that Shane Black, Scott Rosenberg discussion. I think Scott Rosenberg was convinced he does do theme by the end of it because Shane was really hammering it.
I mean, so you're saying that's a super successful guy that doesn't even think about theme when he's writing.
Yeah. He says he never thinks about theme. He doesn't really do theme.
I've talked to people who say that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We only got two talking points.
Two talking points left.
Do it.
Not so secret weapon.
Okay.
I don't know what is this about.
Jamie, I retitled it after you mentioned that it's not so secret, and I think that it's a better name for it. We've talked about the secret weapon. Do you want to talk about it a little more, and then I'll bounce off you?
Super simple. You all recognize it. The not so secret weapon is crossing the streams in Ghostbusters. It's that thing that's set up early and then pays off in the end. It's a Chekhov's gun that kind of plays into the finale. Usually.
It's a specialized,
So it's some kind of, it's the the loader in Aliens is the other one of
the loader in Aliens, the invisibility suit in Invisible Man.
The Omega 13 and Galaxy
Omega
Quest.
13.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm starting to think as I notice it more, as I start actually looking for it, that it's kind of a really crucial ingredient.
And you know what it also is? It's the one premise pretzel most things have. Now, some places don't use it as a premise pretzel. Premise pretzel is an idea that you do kind of a gag, and then you look at it from a different angle. You reverse it. Like the bad guy uses it on the good guy uses it on the bad guy.
We just talked about with Sydney, her secret weapon is she puts on the mask and uses the voice modifier, you know?
That's a premise pretzel, and not so secret weapon oftentimes is kind of a premise pretzel.
Yeah, they
go
hand in hand, and they're kind of going to go into what I talk about next. But this one has, and it's like you notice it, but they don't make it clear that that's going to be paid off, because like when we learn this detail, it's very cleverly disguised as a future secret weapon. Like, you know, Amir is finally telling Robin something real, right? Like he's sharing something real and authentic, and it matters to the story because he realizes like, holy shit, like you were the one responsible for the one and only time I remember my parents like being genuinely happy, right? So when I watched the movie, I wasn't like, the secret weapon, right? Because we've talked about in episodes, we can point to it. And we've even talked about where the secret weapon is set up and then they don't do jack shit with it, like Wonder Woman's the gold suit.
Yeah, the gold suit. Right?
So this gets to so a good thing to ask yourself, like when you're writing, is what is my secret weapon? You know, how can I cleverly, because we learn about crossing the streams like 20 minutes into the movie of Ghostbusters, and it doesn't get brought up again. But it's such a memorable like plant, you know, that you're like, oh shit, that's right. They said don't do it. So ask yourself, like, what's my not so secret weapon, and how can I like, you know, plant it early on so that it could be this big payoff later.
Check it at the door.
So the next thing, Jamie, you were like, what the hell is this when I put it on the talking points?
The premise tactics thing?
I totally get what it was after. I thought, so Jimmy put this thing called premise tactics, and I thought it was like tactics to come up with your premise or something. But I think I know what you mean, so I'm going to try to give it a go. It's so characters use tactics to try to achieve their goal. And I think what you're saying is, what are tactics that are specific to the premise? Is that,
yes.
am I guessing right?
What I'm saying, like emphatically, is that the best movies, the best characters give us tactics that the characters use that we could only see in this movie that like exemplify what the movie is about. So like, I'll give you some examples, because like I read amateur scripts all day, every day. That's what I do. I read scripts from people who are just starting out. And my number one note now is not premise specific enough. So like how an amateur writer would handle, and really probably many great writers would handle this climax, is when Nicolas Cage gives him the list and says, get this stuff, he'd come back with a bunch of weapons, right? Like I'm getting my pig back. He'd come back with a bunch of weapons. But that's not premise specific. What's premise specific is, how is Robin gonna like attack the villain? He's gonna cook him a meal. Like it can't get more specific to the movie and what the movie is about than that. So I'll give you some other examples. And you know, he's using the secret weapon. In Get Out, Chris uses cotton. It's a movie about the horrors of racism. And Chris uses cotton from the chair he's bound to plug his ears so that he's not hypnotized.
He actually picks cotton out of the chair to put it
cotton. Yeah. That is so specific. That is incredible. A premise specific tactic. We just talked about Ghostbusters, crossing the streams. In Predator, it's that premise pretzel. He sets traps just like the Predator did to him. He camouflages himself with mud just like the Predator did. He hides in the trees. In Shaun of the Dead, this is my favorite one. It's a zombie horror comedy. Well, what's like the most premise-specific tactic to escape the zombies? They all pretend to be zombies, very comedically,
right,
to skirt past the zombies. So that is a tactic that is so specific to the movie, and we could only see and enjoy in this movie. So when coming up with like how I have an exercise that I use, and it's called the MacGyver exercise. What would there? You've seen those T-shirts. What would MacGyver do?
Yeah.
When your hero is faced with obstacles, specifically in the climax, ask yourself, every character is the MacGyver of their story. And what would MacGyver do if he had your character's skills, if he had your character's resources? How would MacGyver get out of this situation? And then like brainstorm all the ways that you could do that specific to your story. And you're going to come up with like things that we could only see in this movie. So it's just, I think that was my favorite thing in this movie. For all the things I love about this movie, my favorite thing is the tactic he uses to try to beat the villain
is cooking
and get his pig, is cooking a goddamn meal. It's brilliant.
Yeah, you're right. That was the not so secret weapon, right? Yeah.
That was and there's my MacGyver exercise.
Okay.
What would
I like
MacGyver
the name.
do? Yeah,
I would go with MacGruber myself.
I knew it. I was waiting for MacGruber.
I had to say it, Jamie. I'm sorry.
I knew it. I was about to say it for you. I was about to say Bob wishes it was a MacGruber.
Honestly, I included it because I was hoping Bob would go on a MacGruber tangent. Yes. MacGruber.
It just had to happen. Well, that brings us to the end of our outline.
Yeah.
I don't know if we could even say more about this movie if we wanted to.
No, we've said so much. Thanks for humoring me with all these, allowing me to include all these talking points.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, do you want to say anything you've learned, or did we already do that during the course of the episode?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely learned 3 things, which is you can have, with the right scenario, you can have no ticking clock, and you can feel urgency the entire time. With the right scenario, if your hero is sort of the villain of the situation, upending the world, then you can have a story where you don't introduce the villain for 2/3 of the way and have it work. Those are 2 things that I really took away from this movie.
Jamie?
I learned never pick a fight with a Portland restaurant worker.
Yeah, I know.
That's my lesson for today.
And I learned that I like MacGruber. I don't know. I know you already said it. I think the ticking clock thing is my favorite lesson from this episode. Like how to do, like, ticking clocks are important, and how can you do one without one? This is a perfect example.
Yeah, man.
Yeah,
So good.
That's a great lesson right there. But with that, I think we're done.
Yeah, I got no plugs.
Yeah, no plugs. Jamie has a book apparently on sale on Amazon. Yeah. That's everything then. All right, guys.
All right. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You have just listened to Writer's Blockbusters, a screenwriting podcast featuring 2 professionals and another guy. Available only on Thundergrunt.